Hey guys, what's up? It's Jordan here. So, I wanted to talk about the secondary camera that I recently purchased. This is the Canon EOS Rebel SL3. So, I've been looking for a backup or secondary camera for a little bit now. Because I have the Canon Rebel T7, and I always think it's good to have a backup of something. So I was looking, and there's a few deciding factors of why I didn't go with like a Sony or Nikon, Panasonic, or Fuji, yada yada yada. One of the main reasons was a lens choice. So I already have a Canon EF mount. Easily adaptable. I can throw this lens onto this camera or vice versa, and I don't really have to worry about buying a whole new set of lenses. At that same token too, I don't have to worry about actually going out and buying either an adapter for the Canon EF mount lenses to like a Sony or Nikon, let's say, or just buying new lenses in general, because I mean, who really wants to buy a whole bunch more lenses? So I think, and now don't get me wrong, I mean, there's plenty of times where I've been looking at Sony A6100s and some of the Sony lineup just because they're, I mean, spec-wise, pretty exciting for videography. But this one right here is, I would say, a pretty decent step up. So if you didn't have a Canon Rebel T7i or like an SL2 or something, so the Canon Rebel T7 was basically my first DSLR. I've been doing a little bit more videography. I mean, I still do photography and all that stuff. So this thing right here, body-wise, I picked it up off of Canon's refurbished website. I think it was like $380. They were having a sale, so I got that. I already had the lenses, like I said, and so yeah. Let's dive into this thing. So 24 megapixel APS-C size sensor, so obviously the same crop factor as most other Canon that don't have a full frame sensor. So the Canon crop is a 1.6 times, so a 50 millimeter is equivalently an 80 millimeter on an APS-C size sensor. Now, I think for some of the other companies like Sony and Nikon, it's a 1.5 times crop. I don't know why Canon's is a little bit wider, but that's to be desired. Anyways, very articulating screen. So variable, you can flip it in, out, up, down. I will say I noticed this, so if you have the flip screen out on this thing, once you start turning it, what I would like to see is once you get halfway past this, so like if you're standing in front of the camera, you don't have to have it all the way like that. So, but basically it doesn't flip all the way over to an upright position on the screen. If you're like this, focus in here. Alright, so hopefully you guys can see this, but bam. Alright, so now you're at an upright screen position, and then once you start to tilt it again, it goes upside down. So something I kind of hate. I wish it was like once you got past a certain point on the screen, it would just automatically flip straight up to the opposite side type thing. This is a 9-point autofocus system. So in 2020, I know that they're supposed to be coming out with the Canon Rebel T8i. So basically pretty much similar specs on the T8i to this, but the only differences that I've noticed is you get 45 points of autofocus, which is really nice, and I think a few other features, but As a camera that has been out for the past 2 or 3 years, I think it has been, you get 4K at 24 frames a second, you get 1080 at 60 and 1080 at 30. Don't ask me why they didn't include 1080 at 24, although if I could substitute 1080, if I could substitute the 720 60 on this for 1080 24, I would. So with this too, if you're shooting in 4K, there is obviously a huge crop factor on this. I don't know how well you'll be able to see this, but let's see. Alright, so this is, if you can see it, probably not, that's your 1080 at 30 crop, and that's without the image stabilization on. So once you get into 4K, it then crops it in a substantial amount, and obviously this is on 50mm, so it's going to look cropped in anyways, but the 4K crop is not my favorite. Also, don't know what it did to my lens, but it's making a horrible noise when it autofocuses. So anyways, for anybody that's looking for a secondary body that just wants full HD, higher frame rates at 60, but doesn't want to have to buy a whole new system from a different cam company, I highly recommend the Canon Rebel EOS SL3 or EOS Rebel SL3, whatever it is, but I just call it the SL3. So this is a pretty bare bones camera. Honestly, I mean, it's got manual, aperture priority, shutter priority, program, auto scene intelligent, scene mode, and filters mode, all on the dial. And then to switch it over to video recording, you just flip this switch up here all the way to the left, turn it off all the way to the right. It does do a sensor cleaning, so inside when you turn it off, it'll do a sensor cleaning. It basically just shakes the the sensor inside, which is nice. You have a microphone input jack and an intervalometer jack on one side, a mini HDMI and a USB port on the other. So if you have a gimbal, you can hook your gimbal up to this and control all the functions on the camera through the gimbal. I'm not really going to go into a whole bunch of different settings and stuff, but it's got a pop-up flash, which I know on the Rebel T7 you have to go into the menu to flip it up, but this one you just pop up and down. On the back you have menu, info, which you can do a nice histogram while you're recording to see if you're overexposed or underexposed. This also in the camera itself has a focus peaking, which you can set the different colors. I have it set to red, so this way when everything's in focus it's red. Obviously in the back you have your trash can button, so if you want to delete a clip or a photo, your playback. You have a little dial wheel right here and a set button or an OK button. Aperture button on the back, your wheel, and your shutter button. I will say this camera compared to my Canon Rebel T7, it fits so much better in my hand. It's not as bulky, but it's still compact, and I love the way this thing feels. It's absolutely insane. Very ergonomical, I guess you would say. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Everything else on here is pretty standard compared to a lot of the other cameras. So the thing to keep in mind with this is if you're using 4K, it's going to crop it in significantly. So you'll have to use a wider angle lens, or you're just going to have to position either your tripod or yourself further back when using the 4K on this. As far as I know, the 4K doesn't have autofocus while recording, so that's another thing to keep in mind. although the 1080 at 30 and the 1080 at 60 have continuous autofocus while recording, which is a very nice feature. It's very quick too. I've noticed that a few other videos that I've done on this. Oh, that's not what I want. Let's see. And oh yeah, this also has a silent single shot shooter shutter, which, I mean, it's not really silent, but they have it on here. ISO all the way up to 25,600, and yeah, that's pretty much about it. I don't know what else you guys want to know about this thing. Shoots RAW, shoots JPEG. Oh yeah, there's a 4K time-lapse feature in this. I haven't used it yet, although I haven't also had any opportunity or anything good to shoot with it. I plan on using it at some point. Oh yeah, you can also mess with the audio input on this. So if you have like a mic or something in here, you can control the different various audio. So if you're not a like off-camera kind of audio recorder, and you're just using like a Go mic or a lavalier mic connected to this. Yeah, so basically you can easily control, so if you're using a on-camera, like an external microphone, like a Go mic or whatever, you can basically mess with all your audio and camera while you're recording it. I don't know if you can see your gain settings and stuff on the screen while you record, but what else? Oh yeah, so really quick, this has in-body image stabilization. It does also crop in when you put that on, so that's something to remember if you have a camera lens with image stabilization on it. You might be able to get away with turning the digital image stabilization off. So like the standard stabilization, there's not a huge crop. I would say it's probably like, if I had to say anything, maybe like a 5% crop in. It's very, like, it's not noticeable, but it's very subtle. And then when you put it on like the enhanced mode, it crops it in pretty well. And if you're shooting in 4K, it crops it in, I would say right now on a 50mm lens, on this 50mm lens in 4K with image stabilization on an enhanced setting, I would say the focal range on this is probably somewhere around 120 millimeters. I mean, if I had to guess, I mean, it's pretty big. I mean, right now I'm pointing the edge of the lens of this camera at the lens of that, and basically the only thing that is in basically almost the entire center screen of my viewfinder is the front of the lens. And so I would say that's a pretty significant crop in. Keep that in mind when you're using that. So that's another thing to consider. What else? I think that's pretty much about it, guys. So, oh yeah, this does lens aberration corrections. Video snapshot. So it does a video snapshot, a remote control. I guess you can use like a shutter release cable to control the video and stuff on it too. Oh, another thing too, which I think is probably one of the nicest features of this, before we end this video. So if you're using, let's say, because like I have the Canon Connect app on my phone, so if you have this on a tripod and you're connected through the Canon Connect app, you can easily control both photography with this, and you can also control the video recording options with this as well, which is a super huge feature. It doesn't do it with the Canon Rebel T7, but I was completely blown away that you could do it with this thing. So that's one more thing to keep in mind and take into consideration. So if you're looking for an extra body or another camera, or if you just haven't decided on what camera to buy, for the price, like I said, I know it's a couple years old, but the Canon EOS Rebel SL3 I think is a great option. So yeah, if you guys like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you didn't like it, also give it a thumbs up. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the comments. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the order Taco Bell button, press all the buttons in an elevator, press all of your girlfriend or your wife's buttons. So yeah, I'm Jordan. You guys stay creative, and I'll catch you next time. Peace.